Welcome to the Messy Middle Road Trip podcast. Today we are talking with Lesley Salem, founder of Over the Bloody Moon, a community and organization with a social purpose that runs workshops and a digital self-care hub to help inform, equip, and empower all women going through perimenopause. Lesley describes her perimenopause entry experience like jumping off a cliff with a frayed bungee cord. Her background in market research meant Lesley approached her own research of perimenopause methodically, gathering accurate facts. She found her symptoms of hot flushes and night sweats, insomnia, headaches, and low mood evaporate as she put into practice her learning. Her learnings have been carefully packaged into The House, a digital research hub, and 1-hour masterclasses. Lesley realized that women have more that unites them than divides them when it comes to perimenopause. We know you'll love today's conversation, so let's grab the snacks and hit the road for another episode. I'm Sandra.
And I'm Nicole, and we're entrepreneurs,
Wives.
a mom,
A favorite auntie.
creative souls,
And women who are fearlessly navigating the middle of life.
We created a community of women over 40 who embrace the past, appreciate where we are now, and take action to live our best life because it's all about the journey. Hi, Lesley.
Hey, Lesley.
Welcome.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here.
We're so thrilled to have you. And as you know, we begin every podcast with asking our guests our very favorite question. If you could run off on an epic road trip with any person living or dead, who would it be? And bonus points if you know where you're going.
Fantastic. I love this. I really struggled with this question because I'm a market researcher. So I love talking to people and listening to their stories. And so really it could be anyone, but I'm going to choose Brené Brown. I love that woman. I find her super inspiring. I've read her books. I listened to her podcast, and in particular, the TED Talk that was around embracing vulnerability popped up on my Netflix feed when I was in a really low place with perimenopause, and it honestly, it felt like epiphany. The algorithms were working really well. But I just feel to have time with Brené and to listen to her pearls of wisdom, I would walk out that door and just be kind of transformed, I'm sure. To be honest, it doesn't really matter where we go because it's the journey in itself. But assuming that we were to stop off and open the door, I love nature. For me, I get a huge amount of energy and feel connected with the earth and the beauty. So it would be somewhere really beautiful. So we have lots of places in the world. I think at this time of year, I'd probably go to Scandinavia, to a place I hadn't been before. So maybe through Sweden, maybe catch the Northern Lights if I'm lucky.
That's a great answer. I love that. And I would love to go on that road trip with you. I love Brené too.
Yeah, don't forget me. I love her too.
Yeah, there's space.
We'll just get a really big convertible.
Sounds awesome.
Yes. The thing I love about Brené Brown is that not only can she talk about serious topics that are meaningful, but she does it with humor. And so it's very easy to relate to what she has to talk about. Yeah,
she's
absolutely.
not afraid of being vulnerable and telling her own stories, which I think so many of us relate to.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, let's start with your story then, Lesley. Let's talk a little bit about your own experience with perimenopause and what that felt like and how it affected you, on the daily and, kind of where you're at now.
I would love that. I didn't know what perimenopause was for quite some time. I'd never heard of it, heard of menopause, but that's, you know, something that happened to old ladies, right? So for me, if I backtrack, I came off the pill when I was 46. I knew that, you know, I'd been on kind of the pill for a long time, apart from having a break with my 3 kids. And I just felt like I wanted to connect and tune into my body. Not particularly for any reason other than I just felt it was time, you know, moving into my 40s to just, you know, find other ways of contraception and, you know, just connect and tune in. What I didn't realize was the effect of that was effectively, as I described it, you know, this kind of bungee rope. I kind of plunged into this dry pool of depleted estrogen. And the effect of that was very quickly and sort of, you know, well, it was a slow build, but after kind of 3 months or so, I was getting insomnia, anxiety, hot flushes. And it was very uncharacteristic. If you talk to my friends, they say, I'm super positive, got loads of energy, bit of a social bunny, always kind of entertaining. And I just really didn't, you know, feel like doing anything. So I went to the doctor, and the initial, you know, the doctor kind of thought I was too young for, they didn't mention perimenopause, but they said, you're a bit too young for menopause. Maybe you want to think about antidepressants. I'm also the type of person that, it's not an uncommon story, by the way. I'm sure in the States as well, you have the same, but there's healthcare professionals are not so educated in menopause, and they don't also join the dots. So here I am talking to the doctor, and I just felt really disempowered by that. You know, the idea of having to take a pill, also like having to admit to myself that I was not in a good place. So I went away, and because I'm a market researcher, I went to Dr. Google, as apparently 53% of women do. They would rather go and look online versus see a healthcare professional. I believe the stats are 28% of women go and see their doctor.
Huh. Lesley, can I interrupt you 1 second? How old were you when you were starting to feel this way?
So 46.
Okay, 46, yeah.
Yeah. So at around kind of, you know, 47, I started gathering all of this information, and I realized that it was hormone related. And I have been used to, in my previous work, conducting what I called stakeholder interviews with experts. And what you find when you talk to experts is some kind of big themes that kind of keep emerging, and that's when you know kind of there's a truth behind it. So I was gathering this information, and I thought, you know what, this is really bizarre. I am a researcher. I should be skilled at gathering information, very quickly working out how to self-care, and I'm really struggling. I'm finding it very time consuming. What about, you know, all the women that are working and, you know, busy lives, you know, homemakers, etc. We're all busy. We all have other priorities rather than to sift through loads of information. And I also found that the information was quite biased. So there was a lot of, you know, information by supplement brands and, you know, people touting things as well. So I'm like, do I trust this? What are they selling? And then it was also really confusing. It was conflicting. You know, I'd read that, you know, a particular herb was really good for hot flushes, like black cohosh. And then you'd read, actually, you know, loads of people got liver failure by taking it. And when you're in a state of kind of anxiety, not least to mention the option of HRT, which, you know, has quite a bad rep in the UK for myths and incorrect reasons, you know, I kind of found myself completely overwhelmed by information, to the extent of kind of, you know, inertia and fear. And so I went back, you know, to the doctor, and I was like, should I take the antidepressants, or, you know, what other options are there? So, you know, they said, look, you know, go away, have a think about it. We think maybe you should, you know, go on HRT. And
what's HRT, Lesley?
Oh, hormone replacement therapy. It's
Great,
what
we
call the, what do you call it?
Yeah, it would be the same here.
Similar
I just want to,
Yeah.
just
make
for our
sure,
listeners.
yeah, just make sure people know.
So, so here I was with kind of, a mound of information, a desire to self-care, realizing that the process was incredibly complicated. And so I came across the idea of, okay, well, let's amalgamate the information. I'm going to reap the benefits personally in terms of gathering this information, but I will share that with other people, other women that are going to benefit from that. So, so Over the Bloody Moon really came out of that. Originally, the project name was Wise Women. So I had this idea of bringing lots of different wise women together to tell their stories, to represent positive role models, etc. And that name was taken. And then I was thinking, well, I want a name that, it doesn't necessarily say menopause, because some people are like, ooh, that's, not me, or I'm not ready for it. And it also represents a movement, and something kind of positive and upbeat. So I don't know, in the UK we have slightly different interpretations of sayings, but Over the Bloody Moon can be slightly tongue-in-cheek. So
it's a little cheeky.
Yeah, so it's irreverent. You
Yeah.
can use it as a phrase to say, like, I'm super delighted, and genuinely mean it. But you can also be quite tongue-in-cheek and be really sarcastic about it. So depending on the day and how you're feeling, with perimenopause, menopause, it might reflect, maybe you're in a good place, maybe you're not. And the other thing about menopause is that when we, our menstruation is very aligned to the moon cycle. So there's also this kind of double meaning as you kind of go over the other side of the moon, you're through it. So that's kind of really where the beginnings of Over the Bloody Moon started, and it's begun a journey which is now a year of continuing to gather stories and wisdom, and look at an integrated health and lifestyle approach at how to make the most of this time of life. So actually it's so much more now than just a kind of medical journal of, symptoms. So we do, I'm very interested in kind of all the different aspects. So that's physical, emotional, sexual, and also social, the impact that it has on relationships, not just with ourselves, but with others. But it's a community, it's a place where all these wonderful, women come and share their stories of how they've navigated change, and are positive role models for what it's like to be a woman in her 50s and 60s. And also it's a movement, because I've actually ended up kind of becoming an unwitting feminist, because I think self-care is like a brilliant act of feminism, really, and womanhood, and looking after ourselves.
I love that you were able to incorporate your original idea of bringing wise women together under the Over the Bloody Moon umbrella, because we have to guide one another. Because like you said, instead of Google, let us lean on each other, our experiences, our knowledge, and the folks that are really focused. Because like you said, oftentimes our doctors don't really know what's going on with perimenopause. They're not educated in that regard. So when we can lean on folks in the field that is their expertise, and that they can then provide that guidance, so that we're not just throwing darts in the dark and wondering where it's going to stick, and if it's a feasible plan for us. It's not just somebody trying to sell us something because it falls under the perimenopause umbrella. So I love that journey.
It's really important, because we are quite a unique generation where we are mothers, and that generation didn't have the same experience that we have. We're under huge amount of pressure and demands in a way that our mothers were kind of just coming into their own and having space. You know, many of us that have got kids have still got them under our roof, or they're leaving and all that kind of, you know, leaving the nest, and that brings kind of, you know, sense of grief and loss. We're, you know, more women than ever are working, you know, and rising the ranks and senior roles. Our parents are living longer, but have also got kind of health issues. So we're caring, you know, the burden of care still falls very much on the women. And I felt that, you know, it's really important to create and cultivate conversations, because we can't necessarily talk to our mums because they can't really understand exactly what we're going through. So that's, you know, why it's important.
And I think it's interesting too that the fact that the majority of our mothers never talked about any
That's
of
what
this.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they held it in, and they didn't have that community, that conversation, that bravery to step out. Like you had said, when you initially went to your doctor's appointment and you had to own up to where you were right there, even though it was uncomfortable for you to say it out loud to your doctor, not only yourself, but out loud to somebody else. But then having that vulnerability, that bravery to kick back to Brene Brown and really just be open to expressing where you are, and really finding that sense of, I am not alone in this.
Mm-mm.
You know?
Yeah, having a tribe is so important. And actually sometimes that, you know, it's great to have, of course, your trusted network of friends, but I think, you know, the world of social media has made perimenopause, that menopause transition, very different as well for our generation. So we can now have an extended tribe of sisters that we can, you know, connect with and lean on as well, which is, you know, amazing.
You know, you said something just a little while ago about how you discovered that you're a feminist through this work. And it's so interesting to me that we need to, or not that we need to, but we feel that we are feminists because we are taking care of ourselves, or because we are going in that direction. You know, it's funny to me, you know, Nicole, when you were saying that our mothers may not have talked about this. I think that's really true. And I think it's because we were taught not to talk about these things, and that they just come upon us and we deal with them in whatever way we can, you know, whether it's with medication or otherwise. And, you know, for myself, I turned 50 this year, and I think I'm in the beginning of perimenopause. I haven't experienced too much yet, but part of it is because I don't even know what's coming. I've heard stories about hot flashes and things of that nature, but I really don't know how much more there is to expect. And, you know, on the one hand, I'm like, well, if it's stuff that's uncomfortable, I'm not sure I want to know too much about it. But there is also another part of me that wants to know what that's going to look and feel like, so that I can really prepare to take care of myself.
Mm. Yeah, the preparation is really key. So Avon, the skincare brand, did a report that they released at the end of July. I don't know if you saw it. It's called Too Little Information on Menopause. And they did a global study in 7 markets, including the UK and US. And they found that over 50% of women felt unprepared for perimenopause. And also, you know, the majority hadn't even heard of that term. And I think that's what puts women on the back foot. If you know, if you're a woman that has, you know, is working really hard or prioritizing other people and super busy, and then suddenly you're getting kind of, you know, symptoms, or you've got issues that you've never dealt with, that can really derail you. Somebody like you, Sandra, is probably really, you know, intuitively, you know, kind of exploring what arises, and it might be that you won't experience kind of the roller coaster ride, because part of your journey is that you're constantly asking and exploring and finding different ways, which is, you know, about self-care. So I think being prepared, being informed, is important for women, but knowing the roadmap is different to when we're younger, because I think, you know, we're little, you know, when we're little girls, we're told to conform by the rules. We're even like neurologically wired to be more compliant and to enjoy and respond to rewards to motivate good behavior. So that's kind of inherent with us. And then we are told exactly, you know, what the roadmap is, you know, date, settle down, have kids, you know, work. You've got all of that laid out, and then suddenly you don't. And I think the reason that maybe it was different for our mothers, going back to that, maybe also we didn't hear the conversations. Maybe they were having it to their friends, but we weren't privy to that. And also there wasn't the same visibility then. You know, they were out of the job market. They were, you know, having lunches. They had kind of, you know, more leisure time. We are very much a huge force, you know, in the home and out of the home. And that means that we have to be quite considered about the decisions that we make, the role models, and the way that we kind of present ourselves. And so for me, going back to feminism, I think, you know, feminism is always a battle of some sort, but the battle changes as we win certain kind of, you know, things. And for me, it feels in relation to menopause, this inequality that women have in terms of knowing about this stage, knowing that it can be rocky if you're not prepared, or at least being given the tools and equipped to arm yourself. So, you know, you can make the most of this, because actually it's a fantastic time. And the roadmap changes because it's not linear. And actually, you know, to your wonderful, you know, messy middle, you know, it's exactly that. And actually women are brilliant non-linear thinkers. We're constantly having to juggle things. So it's actually what's messy is the realization that you haven't necessarily got a path or a purpose in front of you, that you have to make that, but not quite knowing how you're going to do that.
I love that. And it's so interesting, the number that you shared about how many women in the world have no idea what to expect. That's a high number. You said was it 50% or even?
Well, in the UK, it's 55%. I think it's around 46% globally.
That's still really high.
It's staggering, right?
And I think it's because, like you said, number one, we're not privy to those conversations when we were growing up as children. Number two, we're not educated about it in schools. And I think number three, there's this discomfort talking about it for so many women still today.
Yeah.
Even though we're taking strides in that. So Lesley, can you share a bit about your thoughts on, you know, why do you think the UK and the US, like why aren't we doing more education and really preparing young women for what's to come? Because that messy middle for some can last a decade or longer.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, we're done with perimenopause, 3 days, you know, we're good. Like it can be a significant portion of our lives that we're dealing with these different symptoms. So why do you think, you know, we're not focusing so much on the education bit?
I think it comes down to culture, and there's lots of different aspects of culture. So one part is education. The fact that this is a life stage that is viewed, it's not necessarily known that well still by doctors, and their answer to it is very much a medical one, as opposed to seeing it as a journey and lots of different ways in which we can make the most of this. So I think kind of in terms of healthcare, there's a job to be done in terms of truly understanding beyond the symptoms what the emotional experience, what the stories are for different women. And once there's empathy and understanding, the conversation will be more suitable. So when a woman comes in and chats, to their doctor, they are given some choices and some reading or signposting to go away and start to kind of investigate. The taboo, I think, is less of an issue in some Western countries, obviously in certain cultures. So, for example, I have been talking recently, making alliances with various women that have created menopause communities for Black women, African, I don't know, in America, women of color. I'm really sorry because we say different things. And, I love talking to them. And, what I found is in certain cultures, there's this real kind of, tough it out. It's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to talk about it. And then in Asia, in certain cultures, there's an embarrassment and a shame. Also, actually going back to some African countries like Nigeria, you're devalued with infertility. When you stop kind of menstruating, that's a time when often husbands will leave their wives and marry younger models. So there's kind of, a fear around that as well. I'm not going to kind of share what I'm going through with my partner. So the taboo does exist, and it does exist as well in the workplace because, as I mentioned, we've got this amazing cohort of women now that are thriving or really rather rising in the workplace. They are more striving and surviving rather than thriving. I think that's kind of the difference. So when you're in a position of power and people are looking to you, it's very hard as a woman who's really struggled to get to that place to say like, oh my God, I can't remember anything. I forgot to do this project. We're not playing by the male construct rules that are kind of, there for us. And all that brings in terms of weakness and worry, and particularly, in COVID with job insecurity, that can cause an issue. So there is a job there to be done in terms of in the workplace support and cultivating again those conversations and normalizing it, and recognizing that with the right support in process, we have so much more to gain by keeping women in the workplace with all their experience and all the female superpowers that they bring. And then the other area, which I think is actually the biggest issue, and we can't, put on anyone else, is ourselves. And that is kind of the complete denial that exists. So, women have the possibility now. There's so much information out there. Menopause market is abuzz with different forums and websites, etc. So we do have the ability to learn and educate ourselves, but we don't want to. That might be about the fact that, again, we're in kind of striving and surviving mode, and actually by facing up to moving forward, we have to let go and deal with some of the things from the past, or look hard-faced at the fears or the issues in the present. And that takes a lot of energy for women. And if we're in a stage where we're just trying to keep the plates up in the air, it's very scary for people because it can kind of create the tsunami. I actually left my workplace. I was one of the 10% in the UK, probably a bit more, I suspect. But the official stats are 10% of women leave work because of perimenopause in the UK. And I was one of them, and I made that choice because I wanted to create space. I didn't want to have any other distraction. And I knew that it was going to kind of, bring different painful things to the surface, and I wanted to have that kind of complete time to deal with that. So I think, education, taboo, denial, inertia, all of those things
Yeah.
play a part. And we're just not very good as women prioritizing ourselves. We're always at the bottom of the list. And I don't know whether that is a biological, again, an innate thing of being a woman. We're born to serve others, and it's just so important to, use this as a window of opportunity where we gather strength. Because if we're gonna, I use this phrase, if women thrive, communities thrive. And we have to sometimes just pull back and away from things to give ourselves that strength, because it's not that we shouldn't serve others, but we have to serve ourselves. And that serving, by the way, isn't being subservient. It's a kind of, can bring a lot of pleasure. I know as we get older, we like to volunteer and do, all sorts. We have our wisdom.
I wouldn't agree with that. I wouldn't agree with that. I find as I get older, I'm pulling back, Lesley. But I want to say something about what you said about needing to take care of ourselves. If it is true that women want to take care of others, the best way to do that is to take care of ourselves. It always makes me think of being on the airplane. If there should be an emergency, they say, take your oxygen first and then care for others. And I think it's a similar thing to what you are saying, is like, when we take care of ourselves, then we can best take care of the other people in our lives. And so I wonder if we can talk a little bit about, instead of saying this is not happening to me, I'm going to ignore it, I'm not going to talk about it, and I'm not going to put it out there. Is there a way in which we actually acknowledge the change that is happening, the things that we are feeling, both good and bad, and really figuring out ways to deal with that change? I mean, do you have things that you share on your website that is helping women really move through this time of change, which, from some of the things that I have heard from other women and things I've read, it can actually be a really beautiful time, and it's not all painful, but there is some crap that comes along with this. And so how do we best make our way through that?
Mm-hmm. I love that question. So I think the whole, and I think you're really right. I do want the message to come across that this is the most amazing time, like it's this metamorphosis and beauty that is kind of unfolding. But the pain comes from the fact that most of us, it's human nature. You don't change your behavior. You don't acknowledge that new habits have to be created unless you're in a point of distress. Now, my whole mission at Over the Bloody Moon is to catch women, in their 20s, in their 30s, ahead of that. So you kind of, you've already got, I suppose, this kind of, guidelines, or a toolbox and team there to help you look at that. So I think when it comes to change, change is always tricky when you haven't asked for it. I like to call change in perimenopause, sometimes it's like an uninvited guest. What? I didn't ask you to come. And I think it's about embracing change. That is the first thing, that it's the key thing actually about perimenopause, is to, whatever time and whatever stage that happens, because, for some women it's, in their 20s and 30s with POI, others it comes, in their late 30s or early 40s because of surgery or cancer. It can be triggered, in lots of different ways, but it shows up. Often the first time we notice it is when we're feeling uncomfortable in ways that might be mental or physical or sexually or other ways that I kind of, mentioned. So there's a quote that I like to share with my community members by Eckhart Tolle. I think that's how you say his name. Is a German that now is living in America. And he says, some change looks negative on the surface, but you soon realize that space is being created in your life for something new. Mm. And I think that is about acceptance, and it's acknowledging that this is a space. It's not a moment. It's not kind of, it lasts a little bit longer. And it's about embracing that. So I think the key thing is to look forward and not back. Mm-hmm. Fine to look back if you've got to in order to move forward, you have to delve and appreciate kind of, your past. But I think it's about being excited about what the future holds. That's really important. Another thing that can happen, because I think there's stages that women go through. And one of the things that women go through the first thing is kind of like, the physical symptoms that they notice. They're not seeing this as a spiritual journey. They just want to kind of get the quick fixes. So for women that are first in that stage, I think it's about tuning in and tracking and working out what are the triggers behind, what I'm feeling. And also, are there certain patterns that I can start to see? So I'm a huge fan with my community in journaling, because I think, with journaling, it allows you to connect with yourself. It allows you to see patterns, and it gives you a sense of control and empowerment. It's also very useful if you then go and see your doctor or specialist to work out how to kind of, you want to heal and recover. It's also important, I think. I'm a big fan of science, and that's not to say that I dismiss nature and natural kind of, remedies. But I think by understanding the science of change that is happening to us physically and emotionally, it takes the fear and the emotion out of what's happening. It normalizes it, and it allows us to realize that this is something that all women go through. So understanding the science behind it, and therefore that we can, through our lifestyle as well as medicine, if that's what people want to go down, there are different ways in which we can manage it. And actually 80% of our perimenopause symptoms can be alleviated or completely reduced just through, lifestyle. So again, that is kind of, very empowering. So it's all about embracing change, owning it and leading it. So, making sure that you're in the driving seat. And I think depending on what kind of person you are, once you've kind of got a handle on the symptoms, you then realize the more spiritual side, which is kind of this open expanse of really what identity and purpose and what that brings. And that's when you start to kind of, that's when I think having a tribe and having access to amazing role models and hearing their stories is really important, because what you realize is that we have to let go of the goals, and the goals of the messy middle to get through that are often better if they are experimental and loose, and it's more driven by curiosity and not pressurizing ourselves to immediately jump from one state to another state, but to kind of, just live with that for a while, and maybe it will work out and maybe it won't. So it takes that pressure off ourselves in terms of, the journey. And on that, I think recognizing it is the journey, not the destination. That, it's, whereas I said before, it might have been, let's have kids and look after my family. Doesn't actually matter what that end point is. Just to know that you're moving and moving positively is really helpful. Going back to the tune and track, I think what's also useful about journaling is it helps you monitor your progress. And it makes you put things in perspective. So, you might have woken up and have a particularly, low mood that day, but actually if you go back on your journal, you might realize that it's only 4 days out of the whole month. And so it just kind of, puts things in perspective, and it allows you to write down your wins, and for you to kind of mark them down. I think it's really important to both document what those small wins are, but also to have a forum to share those with others. And so that's why as well, having a tribe around you allows you to, check in and be honest and get sort of, when you're not feeling great, you get kind of, picked up, but also it fuels positivity, because actually, who wants to listen to loads of moaning women? And that's not to, belittle the crap that we sometimes feel, but at the end of the day, we always feel good when we're around positivity, and positivity fuels positivity, and that enables us to be much more open to positive, good opportunities, and then life becomes positive. And then finally, I think it's about compassion for ourselves, and that's where self-love and self-care come in. But also, I think, to recognize that this is a very unique journey for ourselves, and not everyone is going to get it around us. Our partner, our kids, our friends might be experiencing it in a very different way. So in order to make sure that we don't become resentful, we need to practice loving kindness. I'm a huge fan of mindfulness. So, meditations and things that are available on that are great. But to be compassionate and to help others on the journey, as well as being kind to ourselves.
Absolutely. I love all of this, Lesley. I'm sure Sandra can echo this, but I could sit and talk to you all day about this. You are so in our wheelhouse, and just so much of what you have expressed here today. We've done podcast episodes about mindfulness and feeding that happiness, because as well as I do that if we buy into feeding that negativity, even if we're in that headspace, if we feed into that and that's who we're vibing with, you get back what you're putting out there. So even if you're struggling, like you said, acknowledging it, but really not holding on to it, and just releasing it and saying, this is valid, that I'm not in the mood today, that I'm just having a moment, but tomorrow is a new day and it will pass. But I've loved the content that you've shared today. I would love for you to share with our listeners, how can people get in touch with you? Talk about, where can they find the house and masterclasses offered by Over the Bloody Moon?
Well, yeah, I would love everyone to come join our community. So, firstly, on Instagram and Facebook, our handle is @OverTheBloodyMoon. So yeah, we're regularly posting and sharing self-care and self-love tips and stories from wonderful, wise women. Our website is www.overthebloodymoon.com. And you'll see that there's two different, there's different ways in which women can kind of experience what we offer. So the first are masterclasses. So they work on American time, and they're Zoom 1 hour sessions on different topics. So this month we have more kind of, perimenopausal topics such as managing weight gain and demystifying hormone replacement therapy and brain fog, which is a big issue. And then next month we've got some of our resident advisors. I have a team of 14 different amazing women that cover every aspect of health and lifestyle. And they are also running some masterclasses with me. So that would be great. The house is our core offer. So this is a space where women can go and have I suppose, partly individual experience. So there's different modules to explore that covers every aspect of our health and our wellness. There's a Take Charge of Change course in there that women can do. And it's all about helping you understand what's happening, how you can embrace it, and then what you can do about it. So it encourages women to do home practices. And there's stories in there. So there's stories from women in terms of, these role models and our advisors. So you're getting amazing experience direct from the experts. So, and then in addition to that, there's also individual coaching. I call it Your Peri. So a woman will come to me and share kind of how they're feeling, and then they'll get either signposted to one of our advisors, or I will also do some coaching with them. So yeah, that would be fantastic.
Wow. Lots of amazing things to dig into.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lesley, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and sharing your organization. I'm so glad that you filled the space with Over the Bloody Moon. I think we needed it, because just to have a wealth of resources for women to lean on is amazing. So I'm so glad that I found you. So glad that you agreed to be on the podcast with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Let's keep talking. And, and this is a global tribe as well. So,
Got it, sister.
Thank you, Lesley.
Take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Messy Middle Road Trip podcast and have taken a few tips on how to navigate change skillfully while also caring for yourself.
If you want to keep the conversation going, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, or at messymiddleroadtrip.com. And if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to the podcast and leave us a rating and review so we can reach more amazing middlers.
We're looking forward to our next trip with you. Until then, thanks for riding shotgun.